Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering Arena video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a guide covering MTG Arena's Color Challenge White. Now in today's guide, I'm going to be looking at the white section of the color challenge, telling you, how to get through each level and just kind of teaching you what the level is trying to teach you. Each stage in the color challenge kind of teaches you something important about that color. And yes, you can kind of just look at a play-by-play, and if you are only having trouble on a specific level, I have timestamps that you can go to, but making sure that you're learning from those levels is more important than just getting through them. They're there to teach you, and if you're not interested in learning, there is a skip option in the settings. So again, this will be just a quick little video where I talk about each level, and I do walk you through it step by step, and then I tell you why each step is important and how to play Magic just better. Obviously, this guide is for more beginners, so if you already are pretty advanced in Magic, you should be able to pass these challenges, but just knowing that these challenges are some of the best ways to get into Magic, so why don't we jump right into color challenges. So our first opponent is Chandra Nalar. She is piloting a fast mono red deck that is going to basically want to win the game extremely fast by playing a lot of creatures that have haste and just have a lot of little creatures that are going to come at you really quickly. Now, in this, you are given a pretty decent starting hand to deal with red, as generally life gain beats more aggressive decks because you are able to gain life faster than they're able to deal damage. So they start really aggressively with just a 1/1, and that doesn't seem that bad, but when you only have a play on turn 2 and they now play a haster, meaning that it can attack the turn it comes out, you're being attacked for 3 on turn 2. Now in our hand we have 3 types of cards. We have Impassioned Orator, which is going to gain you value from creatures entering the battlefield, Hallowed Priest, which is going to gain value from gaining life, and Shrine Keeper's just going to, sit there. And so what we want to do is we want to get the order down first. That way, you're able to get value off of every creature that enters the battlefield, not just a couple. You generally want to put the things that are going to give you value for creatures entering the battlefield first, and then play all your creatures. Now, what's interesting is that the value it gives you is life gain, which your Hallowed Priest really cares about. Now, doing some simple math, you should play the second Impassioned Orator first, and then follow it up with a Hallowed Priest. Now, every time a creature is entering the battlefield, you're gaining 2 life, and you're putting 2 counters on each of your Hallowed Priest, which basically means you're going to be very quickly outvaluing your opponent. And at this point, if you look at their attacks, they don't have any good ones, so it's pretty safe to swing. Now, we save the Shrine Keepers for last because they're just not a great card, and they don't generate us any value on their own, but they do generate us value when we have this whole Impassioned Orator Hallowed Priest thing going on. So if you were to play the Hallowed Priest first, you wouldn't be able to do all this. And if you were to play the Impassioned Orators last, you wouldn't gain any of this value. So essentially, you just want to get up some very big creatures. Red generally has trouble dealing with big creatures, and at this point, we're pretty much going to win. Now, they do play a 4/4 flying with haste, which can be problematic, but then they swing with both things, leaving them wide open. You don't have to block there. You can. This was my first time running through, so you'll notice there, then we are able to just swing for the win. And I want to break down a couple of the key points from that battle. So, in the very beginning, we were losing kind of drastically because we had a very slow opening hand. And it wasn't that slow, but our first play was turn 2, and that play really couldn't even block one of their creatures because it was more valuable than theirs. That's kind of how combat works. If your opponent has a 1/1 and you have a 1/1, meaning they have power and toughness of 1 and 1, and their creature is just a 1/1 and your creature does something else, they're going to swing because you value your creature more and need it to stick around longer. And so this gives red this advantage where it doesn't really care too much about its creatures, so it's just swinging at you, and you just can't block until you get a creature that's bigger. And Hallowed Priest then comes down and is able to really turn the game around. The point where red can't attack you, where you have such a good defense against red that they can't swing, is almost the point where red loses a lot of the time. They are either going to lose fast or win fast, and putting up a strong defense that can deal with all of their forces is really important. So why don't we move right on to the next one. So the next one we get to face is actually against Mono Black, and Mono Black definitely is, I would say, harder to face against than Red. Red is very simple. Red just wants to swing, swing, swing. Black will often have, creatures they want to die. They'll have more ways to get rid of your stuff. They're going to be much more interactive than Red will typically be. Now, most colors can be built in many ways. You could have a Black Rush deck, but it just typically colors follow certain rules. Now here we have a very similar start to the last one, where we have Impassioned Orders and Hollowed Priest, and this time our opponent has Death Touchers, meaning that if one of those rats hits one of our creatures, no matter how big the toughness of our creature is, that creature is going to die, which means that our strategy of, hey, let's make one big 9/9 that they're going to have to slowly lose blockers to, isn't going to work as well. So you'll notice here that I decided to play Impassioned Orders first, and that's just because we'll be better off, you could play Hollowed Priest and then next turn play Impassioned Orator, but this just, if I get another like 1-drop, it seems more useful. Now, we get Tactical Advantage, which allows us to boost our creatures in combat, and this is the first time we're really seeing this, and what this allows us to do is trick our opponents into blocking poorly. Now, at this point, you'll notice we're not going to block the 1/1s, and so it's important to think in your head, hey, if I'm not going to block the 1/1s, and he's not going to swing with the 1/1s with Death Touch, may I say, and he's not going to swing with the 1/1 without Death Touch because it'll just die to our Hollowed Priest, well then I can safely swing. Now, we get this card called Angelic Reward, which gives our things +3/+3 and flying, or the thing it's enchanting. So that allows us to perfectly block the Sengir Vampire. Make sure you put it on the Hollowed Priest, that way you can get your creature that you're making really big over the Death Touchers. That's kind of the lesson of this one is, hey, sometimes you won't be able to swing even with your huge creature. You can just, you can make it fly over them and use combat to your advantage. Now, here we get another Hollowed Priest, which isn't super relevant. I believe you can win this without it. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use this tactical advantage. So I'm going to swing with everything. And our opponent's going to be like, okay, easy block. I'm just going to block with the 4/4. And what you can do is you can play tactical advantage. Now, you do lose the creature in this situation, but you're also getting rid of their flyer. If you don't do that, they are going to block next turn, and that just leaves them open to maybe get a kill spell to kill your creature. Generally, you want to get the win as fast as possible. Now, they reveal that they have no cards in hand, and they swing with the 4/4, which is a misplay on their part. They shouldn't have done that. They should have left it up as a blocker. You get Leonin War Leader here, which is amazing with Impassioned Orator and the Hollowed Priest, as when it attacks, it's creating lots of little creatures, which will gain you life, which will then put counters on things. But yeah, I mean, why don't we break down a little bit of how that game went? Now, it felt a lot better, in my opinion, than the red deck, going against the red deck. Now, they did have those Death Touchers that they basically swung with every single turn, which was irritating, but because of the amount of life gain in the deck, you were able to, kind of overtake that and not really care so much about the damage that's coming in, all while getting your huge creature to go over your opponent. At this point, it's still pretty simple in terms of just, oh, play this, get big creature, but as we move into our future ones, there are a little bit more complex interactions that you have to deal with, and one of those is with blue, so why don't we jump right into blue? Also, by the way, before we do that, if you have any questions about the color challenges that I didn't mention, feel free to leave a comment on this video, even if this is, 6 months, a year after this video has gone up, leave a comment and I will reply. I love to see new players in the community, and I hope I can help you enjoy this wonderful game. Now, moving on to our next opponent, we have white versus blue, and each color kind of has an identity, and it's called a color identity, and most colors have certain restrictions as to what they can do. Red is generally fast, black is normally interactive and cares about the graveyard. Blue is generally kind of tricky. They will counter your spells, meaning that you try to cast something and they spend some mana and a card and say, actually, no, that never actually happens. They also like to return things to your hand. They like to draw a bunch of cards. And oftentimes, that combination of drawing cards and dealing with threats is really powerful, so it gets added to decks all the time. you'll notice most decks are multicolored. Now, currently we're using one color decks, but as you move out into the vast world of Magic decks, most decks are actually going to have multiple colors. And so learning what each color does is really important. So for instance, if I told you I wanted to make a black and blue deck, you can kind of come to the conclusion that I'm going to want to control my opponent's board a lot. I'm going to stop them from doing things, and if they do things, I may kill it, and I may resurrect the cards from their graveyard. And you can kind of just know that from the colors of the deck. And while this isn't super relevant to blue, I just want to make sure that people are seeing the themes that are within the colors. Now, I think blue is one of the more tricky ones to think about in terms of how you have to spare your resources. So why don't we go into a step-by-step basis? I'm sure there are lots of people who probably mess this one up just because it is so intricate with different abilities and all that. So why don't we go right into this? Alright, so starting off in our hand, we have a pretty land-heavy hand. We have 5 land cards and just some Inquisitors, which is very different than our past hands. Before, we've been able to just life gain our way to a victory, which is a very powerful deck, actually, within Standard, which you'll probably learn about a little bit later. It's essentially just cards released in the last 2 years, but that's for a different video. We only have these cards, these 2/2s that you can pay 3 and give them first strike, which basically means they will deal damage before the other creature gets to deal damage. So if a 2/2 smashes into another 2/2, like it would happen here, or 2/1, and the 2/2 had first strike, the one with first strike would not die because the other creature would die first, because the one with first strike strikes first. Now, here I'm playing both of my things, and you'll notice here that he plays Air Elemental, and he swings with this 2/1. Now, I could use Tactical Advantage, I could sacrifice my Inquisitor, or I can activate its ability to give it first strike. And when I do that, what it does is it doesn't use a card from my hand, and it just uses mana, which comes back every turn. Now, you'll notice here that I, again, use another trick. I use Tactical Advantage and give him first strike so that I can kill my opponent's creatures while preserving mine. This entire lesson is teaching you how valuable first strike is. It allows you to make 4/4s crash into each other and have yours survive. And so this is kind of teaching you how to keep your only creatures alive, because, well, the only creature we have is a 7-drop. Now, it may be very tempting right here to cast Bond of Discipline to get through 4 damage and gain 4 life with lifelink. But think about it. That's not going to win you the game, and what are you going to do about it next turn? You could hope you draw removal, or you can wait to get lethal and use Bond of Discipline as a finisher. And you know the perfect way to get lethal? Giving everything double strike, meaning it attacks with first strikers and normally. So if a 2/2 with double strike went up against a 4/4, it would deal 2 damage to the 4/4, and then they would both deal 2 damage to each other, and they would both end up dying there. But you'll notice here that he attacks, and we don't quite have lethal, but if we use Hallowed Priest is optional, you don't have to cast it, but if we use Bond of Discipline, it taps down their blocker and gives our stuff lifelink, meaning, while the lifelink isn't important because we have exact damage here, it means that even if we didn't have exact damage, we would be pretty close to winning anyway. Think about it. If you have 4 1/1s and they have 3 10/10s and they're at 1 life, you still win the game. So every little bit of damage counts, and what that color challenge is trying to teach you is the importance of combat and understanding how it works. First strike, double strike, lifelink, all of these are important mechanics that you really need to know how they function. And I'm sure a lot of people did get that. I just want to make sure that you don't just use this guide as a, here's what I'm going to do step by step, and instead take it as a, ooh, now I know how first strike works, so now I can figure out the challenge on my own, so I don't lose my 2/2 against their 2/1, and I can save it. So next up we have white versus green. Why don't we jump right into that? So green is typically creature based. A lot of their cards are going to care about how many creatures they have. They're going to have big creatures. They're going to have 5/5s, meaning 5 power and 5 toughness, for 4 mana. They're the most creature efficient color. And so when facing a deck that is green, you're kind of expecting big creatures, lots of mana. They also are good at ramping, which basically means getting more mana than you're supposed to have. If you play a land on turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to have 4 mana. But green might do something like play a land on turn 1 and then play a creature that gives them 1 mana. Now, on turn 2, they have access to 3 mana instead of 2, and that's the basics of ramping. And green's really good at doing that. Now, in the upcoming one, we're going to learn more about double strike as we get creatures with them, but why don't we actually take a look at that? Alright, so moving into the gameplay, you'll notice here that we have Fencing Ace and Tactical Advantage. Now, Fencing Aces are 1/1s that have Double Strike, and Tactical Advantages are cards that say, it's a card that says 1 white, target blocking or blocked creature gets +2/+2. And essentially what that means is that it can only affect blocked creatures. You can't just boost your creature that didn't get blocked in order to deal damage. While there are some cards that do that, this one is not that. It only can be used in blocking or blocked situations. So this is perfect. A 1/6, we're going to be able to boost our guy up to a 3/3. It's going to deal 3 damage and then deal 3 damage again, which is going to kill the 1/6. And because our thing is boosted, the 1 damage doesn't kill our guy. Now, you'll notice here, I can't just cast my other Tactical Advantage to boost my Fencing Ace up to a 3/3, which would then deal 6 damage to our opponent. Now, there are cards that do that, but not this version. Next, I play Gigantosaurus, and at this point, you're like, oh no, what do I do? And then you happen to draw this perfect card, which, by the way, is called top decking. And that card basically says they can't attack or block. Now, in a game like this, where you have double strikers and boost that only works in combat, you want to be very careful about what you use removal on. Now, if that opponent's creature didn't have hexproof, for instance, it would be better to spend your Tactical Advantage dealing with that instead of pacifism, because first off, you're spending less mana on the boost spell, and you want to save pacifism in case they have another big threat. Now, again, it might look, interesting to go, ooh, Sarah Angel, but think about it. You're going to end up getting more value in the end if you just stop their Gigantosaurus from attacking. 10 damage is a lot, and green also has access to boost. Now here we get Angelic get a reward, which, again, remember I said if you boost double strikers, it is amazing because, well, if you give it +2/+2, it's actually almost like giving it +4/+4. And with Angelic Gift, we can not only swing over their creatures that can't block, but also it just gives that +3/+3, which our deck really needed in order to get out that win. Now at that point, we were pretty much winning. They essentially had no creatures, but yeah, that's the basis of the white color challenge. Now, each one kind of brings up its own, idea. So the one against red kind of teaches you how to play your cards in the correct order to get the optimal value. Black kind of teaches you how to make optimal play choices on when to attack. Blue teaches you more about first strike and abilities that modify combat, and green really teaches you how double strike works and how to save your removal for the correct targets. Now, this was only color challenge white. I am going to be doing one of these for every single color challenge coming out over the next couple weeks. If you're seeing this, sometime in the future, they will all be out on in a playlist that I will link in the description down below. Again, there were also timestamps in the description where you can see all of the different ones, but that's not relevant now because you're at the end of the video. And if you guys have been enjoying color challenges, I really recommend you check out some of my other stuff on my channel. I do lots of awesome stuff. I talk about the news, in terms of Magic news. I talk about custom cards. I do, reviews of products. I do spoiler season. I do all sorts of really awesome Magic stuff, and I think there's something you'd find awesome. Either way, if you found this useful, please hit that like button so that more people who are having trouble with the color challenges or are just interested can find it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.